What's up, guys? So I was gonna make a video yesterday about Floyd, but I decided to take an extra day to kind of collect my thoughts more. And well, you've seen protests all over break out. So first and foremost, I just want to say that that cop was 110% in the wrong, and I think it's an absolute travesty that it took for a whole nation to burn in order for justice to be served. At the smallest way for justice to be served, which is that cop being arrested. That guy, from the second that any sergeant or any chief or whatever would have saw that video, like in that day, within a few hours, that cop should have been put in handcuffs and should have been taken to jail right away. And the fact that that didn't happen, that's the problem right there. That's the goddamn travesty, really, right there. At the end of the day, man, it really comes down to your society will deteriorate when you, when the rule of law doesn't apply to everybody. I was trying to kind of formulate that right now, right? No one can be above the law, especially law enforcement, right? There's no such thing as special treatment. Because if that was the case, then fuck it. Let's just burn this all down. Because if you're not going to treat me with the same level of respect that you're going to treat everybody else, or you're not going to treat me equal, then who gives a shit anyways? Because my life is worth less than yours then, right? That's essentially what you're trying to say. Now, as far as the riots go, you know, this one's hard for me, man. I mean, the truth of the matter is, yes, we all know that there is a better way to voice your opinion. There is a better way to get your message across. But at the same time, that better way doesn't always get people to listen. When you come from those types of circumstances where you might not have access to, you know, bring people together quickly or to, stand up for yourself, all you know is, that could have been me and nothing's changed. No one's arrested. Why would I want to be a part of this society? The one thing that the riots did destroy small businesses. It destroyed communities. And no one wins out of that, man. They don't win. Look at Ferguson. They're still rebuilding, man. They don't. A lot of those businesses, when they go under, man, they're done. You're destroying your community. But it's this emotional outreach and this outrage. And this cry. But it's that cry that's going to spark real change. I hate to say it, but people want everything to be done peacefully. It can't always be done peacefully. And that's not a popular opinion. And I'm sorry, but, sometimes some crazy things need to happen in order for some good to happen. That's just the way it is. Now, do I think it should continue to happen? No, absolutely not. Am I advocating for it? Absolutely not. I understand why it's happening. I think they got the point out. I think you got the cameras in front of you now. So now it's you need to step forward and say, what you want to say, and continue to protest in a safe manner, because it doesn't make sense to continue to destroy your community. But I agree that, just protesting wasn't enough. And like I said, that's not a popular opinion, but I think it should stop. The violence should stop. It should be peaceful marches and, to get the change now. Now, as far as the other side of this, the reason why I'm a little bit nervous about this on the back end is this does give cops a bad name, all the way around. Um, it's a bad stigma in a sense, right? So my fear is that it's going to make it a lot more difficult if legislation comes down, super crazy in the sense of like, oh, cops can't even touch anyone or do anything. Then we might have a problem, because the truth of the matter is this, man. I don't know how, if you're watching this, how you were brought up in your house. I don't know if it was okay for you to talk back to your parents or your elders, or you really don't have to answer to anybody. But when you're out there in the real world and you commit, let's say, a moving violation or something, right? And a police officer pulls you over, their obligation is to tell you who they are, why they pulled you over, and to ask you for your information. That moment is not a time and place for debate. Why you pulling me over? Why'd you do? No, that's totally irrelevant. This is supposed to be a smooth transaction. Like, okay, you think I did this, the cop, if you're looking at it the citizen's perspective, oh, the cop thinks I did that. Well, I didn't. You hand them the information, they write you the ticket, and then you go to court and you argue it. You sit down in front of the judge and say, hey, on this date and time, I was doing this, whatever the circumstance was. The cop will say whatever the circumstance was, and it'll get handled from there. Handling it right there at the moment is not the right way to do things, and refusing things from cops is not the right way to do things. So let's take this let's just take this for an example. from my understanding, these some of these people that are really, really anti-police and just all this and that, what do you want? You want complete reign? You don't want cops to have any power. So if someone speed past the stop sign, blows by it, we're not supposed to pull them over. And if we do pull them over, we're supposed to beg and plead with them to give them their information. If they say fuck you and they drive off, we're supposed to say, okay, have a nice day. You know, at the end of the day, law enforcement needs to use force. Make no freaking mistake about that. A lot of people here that are like, behind their iPhones or behind whatever, they don't realize in the real world there are evil people out there, man. And those people aren't going to stop. They aren't going to just, be like, oh, okay, everything's cool now. No. They only get dealt with force. And there's a time and a place for force. And I think your command presence and the way you speak to people makes a huge, huge, huge difference. But there are certain people that want the smoke. It's just no other way to say it. They don't care. They're looking to get into a fight. And if you strip away the powers of a cop to be able to get in a fight and to be able to, successfully detain that individual, they will wreak havoc on society across the land. I think there's a grave misconception of force. Nobody, it's like, they taught us at the academy. They were just like, like when you're going to use force, make it quick, hard, and swift. You can't be all soft and stuff because it looks really bad on camera. Quick, hard, swift hits. There's a problem on both sides. There is. Sometimes people just don't want to listen. And sometimes cops have an ego problem. It's the truth. There's this fine line of like who's right, who's wrong. And that really comes down to the core of being a human being, right? No one wants to feel inferior. The battle there that I really see, like, and more day and day of this emerging is if you tell a cop, like, you're going to lose everything you have if you use force. And cops start having to second guess themselves on every single thing that they do. Why would you ever want to enforce anything? That in that back end way, society deteriorates too. Now, I don't know how training is back east. I don't. Maybe, I think some of the flaws that I'm seeing here, because you're seeing a lot of these problems back east, not so much here on the West Coast, because we are, it's different. I was trained by the greatest law enforcement, academy in the world, greatest organization in the world, in my opinion, and they're top tier, and they, so maybe I'm not trying to say that it's not top tier back east, but maybe like their standards and their practices are different. Maybe the ultimate solution from this is to have federal, guidelines across everything for how individual law enforcement needs to be treated. Like, hey, here's one, for example. If you're detained and you got the person detained, maybe you shouldn't hit them or put your knee on their fucking neck. And if you do, then that will count as a murder charge. So then no one has an excuse, like I'm all for stuff like that. My only concern here is if this gets too out of hand and they try to strip complete powers away from law enforcement, they're not going to be able to do their job. But at the same time, 99% of the people that law enforcement contacts are usually cool, man. They're not looking for this outrageous 1% of videos you see that end up on YouTube. People genuinely do respect cops, man. They do, and cops genuinely do respect people, man. There's no point we could get along. It's always that 1%, is what everyone says. And it's true. It is to the levels of the extreme. You do have those shit cops. And the only way you're going to be able to get them out is record, and isolate them and figure out, hey, you probably shouldn't do this job. And that's another thing too. Definitely, background checks for when cops are being hired should be a little bit more scrutinous. You should definitely see a psychologist. You should definitely see, and I wouldn't be shocked to find out that a lot of departments, back east probably don't do psych evals, or maybe they don't do a super extensive background check, but if you do a psychological evaluation and you borderline this, tyrannical person or like a power thirsty person and not logical, maybe being a law enforcement officer is not probably the best thing for you. I don't, an officer should never use their power. You're not above anybody, bro. You got the power from the citizen. You know what I mean? Like you work for them. You know what I mean? You got a gun and a badge. That doesn't mean shit. That has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? Like you're there to do a job on the behalf of the people. The people are the people are who gave you the power. You don't have that power because you're some badass dude and you could fucking, I don't know, black belt in karate or whatever. No, man, that's not how it works. They're there to serve the public, you know. And I think a lot of cops sometimes they do forget that. I mean, but a lot of them don't, man. A lot, like, I mean, I personally know a lot of cops, and they're all level-headed, normal dudes that don't go on power trips. Matter of fact, when their 9-5 is done, they lock their stuff up, and then they are XYZ citizen. They don't even carry off duty or whatever. They're just normal people. They love to do the job because they actually genuinely love helping people. You know, it feels really good to be able to go and help someone when they're in need. You know, you show up on a car accident and someone's, you know what I mean, lost and confused and scared, and you help them out through it and you make them feel good. It's a great freaking feeling. Unfortunately, the ugly side of this is stuff like this when it gets a little bit out of hand. Not a little bit. This got extremely out of hand. I'm talking about, maybe you get in a fight with a drunk person, or you get in a fight with someone that's completely not agreeing with you or whatever, you know? My only thing to wrap this whole opinion thing up is that cop was dead wrong. He needs to be charged with murder. And I think the ultimate solution from this could be is there needs to be federal standard guidelines across all states of these United States of how to hire and how to evaluate who could be fit to be a police officer. Because I feel those cracks and these things are lacking. And these air quotes bad apples are cracking more through it. And you know what? Just like you would hold a doctor to a higher standard, cops need to be held to a higher standard. So, I think there's not a cop out there that would say, don't scrutinize me, because you know what you're signing up for. You know what I mean? And if you can't live up to that high standard, then you shouldn't be doing the job. And obviously, this person wasn't able to control, his temperament. I would not be surprised at all if this came back as a personal beef, because that article that they worked shifts or whatever overlapping, they were both security guards, which is crazy, because why the hell would you have a cop allow him to be a security guard when he's employed by, your organization? There's too much liability there, But either way, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just this egotistical dude that went on a complete power trip. I wouldn't. But guys like that need to be rooted out, and guys like that need to be held accountable. Just like you would call out just like you would call out a racist person, just like how you would call out a bad person for doing something. If you see a bad cop, they need to be called out. It's really that simple. But I think the ultimate legislation does need to be some federal guidelines on how to hire and how to train and how to handle, situations. There is a huge lack of cross, communication talking when it comes to to an individual officer level. You're really relying just on the guidelines of your agency in your state. And you get some federal guidelines, but not a lot, So I think that would definitely help. Guys, there's no easy way to fix this. Cops have to use force a certain time. Sometimes it's going to get ugly. Force like this, where it's completely unnecessary, the cops need to be held accountable. You can't hide behind the fucking shield when you're not even using common sense. If someone's saying, I can't breathe, and you got them detained, that is not... That's the thing that just blows my fucking mind, man. It's really not that difficult to make a decision like that. Like it's I don't know, man. It's a very complicated decision and making process when you're a cop and you're flowing through stuff. But I'm having a really hard time, with the lack of, I guess, just overall guidelines, man. Like, I don't understand how someone could think that that's wrong, and I'm really having a hard time when people are online and they're accusing every single cop of being, just as bad. If you take anything from this, just know not every single cop is that bad. And just know that most cops are most likely, on your side when it comes to extreme violence, like that. This is not acceptable.